Annyeonghaseyo. My name is Caitlin Vaughan and I'm from Ontario, Canada. I have an honors bachelor degree from Queen's University in Ancient Greek and Roman Civilization and English Literature. I love reading, as I'm sure you can tell from all the books behind me, and I love drinking tea, and I love traveling and learning about new cultures. I've actually lived abroad twice. First, I lived in England in a small town called Hurstmonsu, and last year I was living in Beijing. I would love to come to Korea to teach English and to learn more about Korean culture. For my mock lesson, I've decided to do an English grammar lesson on conditional sentences. So the first step would be explaining to the class what a conditional sentence is. So I would tell them that a conditional sentence is a sentence that's made up of an if clause, or the conditional clause, and a main clause. And I would give them some examples. So if I won the lottery, I would buy a car. If I won the lottery is the conditional clause. You can't just walk up to somebody and say, if I won the lottery, and then walk away. It wouldn't make any sense. You have to have something after that. You have to have a main clause. So I would buy a car is the main clause. So I would go through a couple of examples with the class until I was sure that they were comfortable with it. Then for a class activity, I would have a matching game. So I would have two categories, one entirely of if clauses and one of main clauses. But I would have them scrambled up. So together they would make up a conditional sentence, but you have to match up the right clause with the other end of the sentence. So at the top it might say, if I was at the beach, and the other part of the sentence might say, I would buy a car, which obviously doesn't make any sense. So they would have to go through the list and be like, okay, if I was at the beach, I would go swimming. That makes the most sense. So once the class had completed that activity, I'd have another game, which is pretty much the same, but it would get them up and moving, because I know that English grammar isn't always the most stimulating topic, and I want them to be, awake and attentive and making sure that they're taking in the lesson. So this game is called Find Your Partner. So they'd come up and they would take part of a sentence out of a hat. And they'd read it. So this one says, if it were New Year's Eve, so that's the conditional part of the sentence. They would have to then go around the class and try and find the person that has the other half of their sentence, the main clause, to go with this conditional clause. So they go up to one person and they say, if it was New Year's Eve, and the other person might say, I would buy a dog, which doesn't make any sense. So they'd have to keep going. They go up to another person, if it were New Year's Eve, and the other person would say, if it were 1700. Also doesn't make sense. Those are two conditional clauses and they can't go together. So they go around until they found the person that had, if it were New Year's Eve, the other person would say, I would be at a party. And then they would have the sentence right. And we could even do a kind of whoever got their sentence first could get a little prize to give a little incentive. To wrap up the lesson, I would hand out give a handout with a couple example sentences, but they would have to finish the sentence. So some sentences would be only the conditional clause, and some sentences would be only a main clause. So they might say, if it were lunch, and then they would have to fill in the rest. They could say whatever they want. If it were lunch, I would be eating pancakes. If it were lunch, I would be at the park. Something like that. It lets them get creative. It lets them use what they learned. And it also helps me to make sure that they've understood the lesson. So that's how I would end the lesson, just to make sure that they knew what they were doing. So I hope you enjoyed my lesson. I would definitely love the chance to interview with you to discuss some more ideas that I have for lessons. So please feel free to contact me. 감사합니다.